We just took education to the sky. That's how I'm gonna, yeah,
We did.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostrawser here with Ali Privet. Ali, wow,
Yeah.
wow,
I mean, I'm lucky to have gotten taught by Jen Sharp and seen her work in action. I mean, eh, everything that she was talking about, I'm like, I remember experiencing this with you, like she took a very stressful, anxiety-ridden process for me. Like you have to understand
hmm
the the line for tandem skydiving is a tandem is not just another skydive.
yeah,
It's not. There's a lot more elements to it when you're taking someone for both people,
right,
right? And it's like, I want that experience to be really good and safe for both me and my student.
hmm
And right when you're learning something new, especially something that has some danger to it, I mean,
some,
you are falling towards the ground, right? Like, yes, you have two parachutes to, deploy, but nonetheless, there are some bigger risks with the sport that I do than
hmm
maybe speed walking. Okay. And
You said speed walking. I love it.
I mean, those speed walkers go, their videos are
Hey,
hilarious. But Jen just made it like all of the things, like, and it was fun. At the end of the
yeah,
day, I I was fearful of certain aspects just because it was new elements to the sport, taking it to another level. But at the end of the day, at the end of each jump, I'm laughing, I'm excited, I'm, feeling all those feels that I did
hmm
when I'm first jumping, and now being a tandem instructor, taking students on their first or next skydive. She's right. Like there is this like connection and euphoria that you experience in that moment. It's irreplaceable and it's
yeah,
like why people want to do it. So
hmm
it's cool to I mean, I love obviously sharing the sport on the podcast because I think there's so many parallels to education and disrupting education. And Jen really brought that home for us
yeah,
in a way that I probably couldn't have articulated because she has 30 plus years experience skydiving and a wealth of teaching skydivers and teaching adults and then also teaching people of all ages through music education. And I know she was downplaying like, oh, I only did 3 years. That's 3 more years than most of the population
right.
has done. Like, kudos to you, Jen.
I mean, unpacking like I'm just like looking over my notes. And by the way, if you really want the best of these podcasts, take notes. I mean, Allie and I take notes on each person we speak with, and they share their stories. But I really like, the way that people learn is it's for real in person. Like I like her story, the flame was lit when she saw it happen. Like, she saw somebody float down into K-State Stadium. And what's so awesome about it is that was her later in her life, right? I can't tell you how many times in my own life, like once you get something in your mind and you're like you get that goal, and how you can help people move towards it. Um, that there's such a fire there that lights, and then like when people you are teaching people while you're working towards your own goal. That's a very big piece, because what she said there is when she was 16, which is interesting. You can fly a plane when you're 16, but you can't jump out of it. I mean, intentionally, I guess. Uh, I digress. But like when she saw it, like I remember seeing things like when I was in one of my interviews, and the department chair was like, "Where do you want to be in 5 years?" And I was like, "In your seat." And lo and behold, I mean, he retired, and I was in that person's seat, right? Like you really can set these aspirations for yourself. Um, and knock out, understand the fear that's behind it, but harness it and use it for good, and to kind of motivate yourself. And then once you reach that point, then you can continue to move on and then create more and more and more. So, man, there was so much in that podcast about like I was reflecting on my own life, and I hope our listeners were reflecting on theirs. I know you were reflecting on your journey, especially in the air. Um, it just really gets you thinking about, okay, for me, I think it's I would be more afraid to stay on the plane, than to jump after I've gotten all the correct parts of what we need to do. And I go back to that time when I tandem jump, or not tandem, my static line jumped, and I remember I don't care what's going to happen, like I'm going to do this,
Mhm.
and I was more afraid of just staying on the plane. And I think that's, for our educators, like be more afraid of just staying the same. So,
I love that. And she didn't use this phrase, but it is all over her work. And it's actually, you know, whenever I share that I'm a skydiver, I get very common reactions. So it was interesting for her to say, like, multiple times, like, people think they're so different. And then, like, we have way more commonalities, like, we all say, like, we learn by doing and stuff. But
right,
the other thing is that, people will say to, when I share I'm a skydiver, like, oh, I could never do that. I'm afraid of heights.
right.
Right. That like, and it's, or I'm what they're saying and what Jen unpacked, they fear the unknown.
Hmm.
But the best response that Jen writes about in her work, in the response that I really like that she shares, is no one said you had to be unafraid.
Mm, yeah.
No one said you had to be unafraid.
Hmm.
It's okay to have fear. I
Yeah.
love that message. And I wish I had heard it at the beginning of my skydiving journey, because I was so afraid. I mean, I almost quit so many times, so many early jumps that seemed like it was so much to move the needle forward.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd had an instructor like Jen to be like, we need that cycle, the three-part cycle to success. We need it to be fun,
Hmm.
or time, or good, right? Like, I wasn't good at skydiving. Naturally, I had to work really, really hard at it, but I put in a lot of time. And by putting in a lot of time, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I found so much fun in the sport. And then eventually I got decently good at it. I've progressed. And the cycle, like, continues to build, right? Like, the more time I spend on it, the more fun I have on my jumps, the
Hmm.
better I get at it, the more time I want to put into it. And, like, again and again and again, that learning model in fusing, like, where's someone at?
Yeah.
Just figuring out where they're at. Do they find it fun? Do they like putting in the time? Are they just naturally good at it? How can you link that for their success is so powerful. And then just remembering, like, so many of our fears in education, whatever level you're at, like, no one said you had to be unafraid.
Hmm.
Don't let that fear hold you back, though, right? Like, don't let it keep you on the plane. Release it is like the most powerful message I think we've heard, just from a global perspective of the podcast in 2024, is that message of you do not have to be afraid of whatever is coming at you in the educational space. You can still disrupt education and be afraid of the disruption.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and you unpacked it a little bit on the podcast last week, but around like the fun, the time, the good, and then there we'll go into the other part, the lazy and the which I just love these analogies. But if you think about it, right, like if things are you're burnt, right? Like you're burnt out. And you think about it like if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? And the world is changing. I love the analogy. She went all the way back to 1500, which is funny. But like if you're not changing, you're actually wasting time, right? And I'm thinking of the negatives, but then I read this book about like Bob Knight. Like sometimes it's cool to be negative because when you see the negative, then you can see the positive. You know, say what you say about Bob Knight. But like I thought it was an interesting analogy. So I'm going to kind of go that route right now. Like, so if you're looking at like what if you don't change, you're wasting time, right? You only have so much time. And it's not good, it's bad. Right? It becomes you become worse because if you're in the same place and everything else is moving, you are actually becoming worse. You're going further away from whatever the goal is, and then it becomes not fun. So if you look at the opposite side of that is true. So then, going back to giving yourself the grace, like you said, of, no one said you had to be unafraid. You can't be unafraid. Like you had to be unafraid. Like you can be afraid. And I think that is such a brilliant thing to say for our educators. I don't care, like 23 years into this job that I've had, and I'll be honest, I'm afraid at the beginning of every year. Like I am. And I still want to know, do I have it? Am I going to suck? Am I going to be the old guy that now I'm so detached from my
Mm,
students? Are those fears are real? And I want all our educators to understand, no matter where you're teaching, those fears are real. But
mm,
I love what you said there, Ali. It's just like embrace those things. And it all comes from Jen as well, is just embrace it, take the breath, let it go, be humble and learn together and start to get back into that. All right, let's just have fun with this. You screw up in front of kids, let's have fun with it, right? Let's use time to continue to grow. And you know what? Let's just make this good. And guess what? You can ask your students those three things. Like, what would make this course, this unit, more fun? What would make it more not wasting your time? What would
mhm.
make it good for you? And you'll get answers. And so that it was just brilliant. I love those three words.
It's 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 huge, and it would help students develop self-awareness, which is what Jen was talking about. And a lot of that, you know, in education, right? Like teachers think that they, they have all this knowledge and they need to impart this knowledge. And I loved, she was like, take your knowledge and bottle it up, and you are not your knowledge. And right, this idea that you can, right, I know educators get burned on like, I have to cover these standards and I have to meet
Hmm.
all of these things and they look so far in advance. But it's like this idea of being present and looking at exactly what you're in front of and how can you just move that needle. There's so many ways to check the box and meet the standard.
Right.
uh but if you kind of channel the present, it can release all the fears. Because I will tell you, in skydiving, after you leave the plane and you're in free fall, I have yet to hear someone be like, I was afraid in that moment. It was the freedom of falling at that point. There's all this
Mm-hmm.
buildup, right? Like you're anticipating all this stuff. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. And then when you're actually doing it, that's when you're not afraid. And so it's like with education, you can build up all of these scenarios and all of these things you have to do. And you can forget to be present in the moment with your students. And that like self-awareness piece of just checking in, taking a breath, relaxing, be neutral, as Jen said, right? Like, so in
Hmm.
skydiving, right, it's the relax, breathe, arch, and be
Hmm.
neutral. Like
Yeah.
those are the pieces. And you can apply that anywhere.
Yeah.
You can apply that no matter what industry you're in, whether you're a business listening to this podcast, whether you're a school leader, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student. Everybody can apply that, and you can bring that self-awareness and that presence, and it will probably remove a bunch of your fears,
Yeah.
right? And a bunch of your doubts. Because, right, you were saying like before every school year, I'm afraid. I
Yeah.
can totally relate. You
Hmm.
can totally relate. Like you have all of these, and then the first day of school comes and you're doing it, you're going through it, And
Yeah.
usually, I mean, I always found like, I'm like, I love this. This is awesome. What was I afraid of? What did I
Hmm.
have? I mean, like, all those things are like good. And it's the same as skydiving. Like, that buildup is really anticipating like all these things you're going to release. And they do help you get through those tough times. Like,
Yeah.
there's a yin and a yang here, but like, you do have to get to the doing part. You can't stay on the plane, as you said. I love that because
Hmm.
it's, it will prevent you from moving forward and changing and relaxing into like new possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I want to go to the other three as well, like the be lazy, make mistakes, and have fun, right? I was thinking about this. I was actually thinking about this podcast as I was driving home from work, which is beautiful. I mean, I have about a half an hour commute for those who don't know. And it's not bad. I thought it would be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a long commute, blah, blah, blah. It's a new gig this year for me. But I really like the time to think, right? It's one of those like times where you're not supposed to be, although there's a lot of drivers who are, like you're on your phone or you're distracted, but when you're alone with your own thoughts, which is few and far between. So try to do that if you're an educator. That's the breathe part, which I like. But I was thinking about the the concept of if you're an educator and you are burnt or you're feeling really burnt out, right? And you might be like year five or so, and you may want to like quit or whatever. What do you really have to lose to try something like, let's just, you know what, do it the way you want to do it? What are you going to get fired? You wanted to quit anyway, who cares? Right. And that's why I want to go back into that, like being lazy, which I love the fact that she was like, don't be lazy and just sit back and put your feet up on the table. But it means like get out of the way of the students. Like, be lazy, bring somebody else in, give the kids a challenge that's a real world challenge, and get out of their way. Let them screw up, which is the second one. Make mistakes. Let them make mistakes and let them like and don't be the teacher who's like, I told you so. Say, what'd you learn there? Like figure it out. There is so much joy in watching people grow around you as well as yourself there. And I think that's why most people get into education. They want to help, and Jen said it as well. You want to leave your legacy, so you got to kind of do that, and then like have fun at like figuring out like, oh my gosh, should that happened? That wasn't supposed to happen, or maybe it did happen. Oh my gosh, this is so those other three statements, be lazy, make mistakes, and have fun. Um, I'm going to challenge, like, look, if anybody's like thinking or on that edge of change, or yeah, you're in the middle of the year and it's like, oh my gosh, you keep hitting the wall. You've got nothing to lose, right? There's not a lot of teachers out there coming in your world. And guess what? Like when you do these things, I'll be honest, like I'm a very non-traditional educator. But that's just not my knowledge. I'll put it out there. But like it's because of using these concepts. I didn't realize I am using these concepts until Jen said it. And we're kind of unpacking it here, but really the students will perform. They'll perform on their tests, so they'll perform on, grade wise, but they will become like allies and teammates with you in this learning journey. And that's why I think this is such a great podcast that we had Jen on to kind of unpack all these amazing people that we've had on this whole series. But it really kind of just in three statements, although there were two of them, but there were six statements, fun, time, good, or be lazy, make mistakes, and have fun, which is kind of the similar piece. It's simple, isn't it, Allie? It's simple.
Right. I mean, imagine she's your skydiving instructor. She's going to make you feel that way before a jump, you know? She's phenomenal at what she does. And in kind of taking the scariest situations in people's lives that they have in their mind and
Right.
making it this like joyous, exuberant experience. And I love something that she would always share during the course is, you know, those of us who consider ourselves skydivers and are doing it every weekend, getting in the air, she always says, like, no, your students are the cool ones. They woke up and they're the ones that, decided to go way outside their comfort zone, take a chance. You're a stranger, and like they're going to do something that terrifies them for the majority of them.
Hmm.
And like they're really the awesome ones. Like they think we're awesome and they're like, wow, like we just, but really they are.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about this, like my favorite years of teaching were the ones where I was really like, my students are so awesome. Like they're so awesome and I have so much to learn from them. And I mean, some of my most memorable teaching moments involve mistakes, quote unquote.
Hmm.
We learned all through them. I remember we'd laugh about them and make it fun, right? Like you'd have this whole cycle of everything that she's talking about. And it was just getting out of the way and being like, wow, I have more to learn. I don't know everything about this area. And we can learn from each other. I just like, there's so much power, I think, this time of the year in school, just
Hmm.
reminding yourself of that. And if you're partnering with schools, like, again, how can you know, make it fun for those involved? Like, and the play aspect with kids, I think is so powerful in the classroom. And like as adults, we don't play enough. Like I
Right.
remember hearing the speaker talk and it was like adults laugh I mean like 5 times a day and like kids laugh like 200 times a day because they like look at a ketchup bottle and they're like, ah, it's red. Like you're just like laughing about the ketchup bottle being red, but they think everything is funny and playful and fun. And like we don't have those types of experiences.
Yeah.
And I think there's such an opportunity in education to have more fun because it's like I don't know why it got so serious. I mean, I do and I don't, but
Right.
like we don't we can make it more fun.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to you. I think education as a whole would benefit from, getting out of the plane, so to speak. Like whatever that means to you.
Get out of like take the risk, right?
Yeah.
Take the risk. And there's so much like you will learn so much more about yourself. Don't be afraid of yourself. I think that's I mean it's okay to be afraid of something, but you have it in you. I mean, we're human beings, right? So I just there was so much to that. I'm gonna go back and listen to this again. I think this is gonna be that episode. Not, there's so much. But this is an episode like if you just hit the wall somewhere or you're just feeling like I will listen to this episode again and again, just because there's so much like, yeah, you know what? Suck is gonna happen, but you can move through it, and we're built to do this, and that's the big takeaway. We're just focusing on the good, and I thought like kind of my last thought here was thinking about. I think it was Einstein where he like wrote all the numbers on the board, and it was a sequence, and then there was one out of place, and he asked his students, well, what do you think about that? And they all pointed at the one problem, and they were like, well, there's an error there. But he's like, yeah, but you guys didn't see all the other parts that were right. And Jen also said that in her own way. Um, Start looking at what's right, and it starts with you. Like, how can you make things good? How can you continue to have fun? And how can you use time as an asset, right? I mean, we often look at, and I don't think we say it enough in education, we do not have a lot of time to do things. However, man, play the game with time, right? See what you can do in that area or that amount of time that you have, and challenge yourself. I think there's so much fun in the time frames that we have, to try things. And then if it goes way long or way short or whatever, learn in that time. So I don't think we look at time enough as well, but I think everybody has the time. It's to make things fun and good. So, what are your final thoughts there?
So it, sometimes people in skydiving are like, oh, we're only going to get 45 seconds of free fall. That's not that much time. And we're like, have you ever sat in front of a microwave waiting for your burrito to heat up? It can seem like a long time.
Yeah,
Perspective, right? The
right.
yin and the yang of time is how
Hmm.
you view it. If you don't think you have enough time, you're right. If you think you do, you're right.
Yeah.
know, and just for those wanting to disrupt education, like you do have the time, and it doesn't have to be all right now. We have heard from so many guests this fall about like if you just get one or two steps into the path that you're trying to disrupt education, it can cascade and build. And like just taking that one seemingly innocuous small thing that you're
Hmm.
passionate about, that you want to put your time into, right? You want to put your time into it. It's fun for you and you're good at it. You can 100% disrupt education.
Yeah.
Like you absolutely can. I mean, everybody we talk to is disrupting education in their own way. Big, medium, small, huge. Like and it grows. Like I
Yeah.
think about, we've got individual contributors, so to speak, and they're disrupting education in their fields, like Jen.
Hmm.
And then we have organizations like NAF, and they're reaching over 100,000 students right now and are across 35 states. And they're doing it at this like much bigger level. But they're both disrupting education, and there's room for everybody in that. And that's just like the more we talk to these organizations and individuals and companies and across the spectrum, the more I feel like empowered that anybody listening to this podcast can find a resource that will help move them forward, whether it's a mindset piece that we did in the summer,
Mm.
or it's like really all these people deep in the work that are making these connections and are deeply invested in changing education, that no matter where you're at, like you can move the needle forward. And that's just been like so encouraging. Like I know we've been podcasting now for over 2 years, over 100 episodes together, like
Yeah.
well over. And it's like we're just in this really, really cool spot with the podcast to kind of provide our listeners with this past year. Like, if you're looking for a resource to help disrupt education, look no further than this year's worth of
Yeah.
podcasts.
Right.
You would find someone to grab arms with
Hmm.
and like and you can do it, like there's one nugget in there for you, like I believe that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm so excited about for where the podcast is heading and everything as we get closer to 2025. So we just want to encourage you, like if you're not sure where to start with the podcast, like reach out, because we're great connectors.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we've spent the time with these individuals and getting to know their story and what they're about. And then like, if we don't know someone, we know someone who knows someone. And
Right.
the network that you build is so important in disrupting education. And it's just been really cool to kind of take it to another level this year with the podcast.
Right. And I'm going to add to that, when I do get people reaching out to myself as well on LinkedIn, and just drop me a message, or Allie a message. And a lot of people are like, where should I start? And I have to ask the question, well, what are you most interested in right now around education? And think about that, because then we can set you up with, where do you want to start on this journey, right? Rarely do people like start like Brooke was joking around a few weeks ago, like, you know, I started at one, and we're 350 plus, headed to 400. Yeah, you don't have to do that, but we can kind of guide you and help you in that capacity, because we obviously know like who we've talked to and kind of where they stand. Also reach out to our guests. We are going to be, wrapping up this year, coming up, and we're also going to be more intentional, I think, as we move forward with the podcast, and some of the changes that are coming along. Super excited for that. Yeah, it's been a great series, but guess what? There's more. So,
We're taking our next
yes,
breaths because we're
yes, yep,
changing.
that next breath is exactly right. So, for Ali Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Hey, stick around for the next week because we still have more coming, and we're glad to have you on this journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, share it out. We're growing and growing and growing. Our subscribers on YouTube, our Spotify, it's moving up. Super excited. We're getting close to 200,000 plays on YouTube alone with our shorts and everything. So there's a lot of things out there that you can take and put into play. So again, for Ali Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you so much for listening to the Disrupt Education podcast. We'll catch you next week. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Ali Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.